Your source for all things Texas Tech. This is the Ask Level podcast from Double T 97.3.
Welcome into the Ask Level podcast, episode number 24. With Chris Level, I'm Chois Woodman. Glad to be with you for a 24th consecutive week. There's been some, ups, downs as we've been doing these, but had a up and down week within that was pretty spread out. If you're looking at Texas Tech basketball, we'll look at basketball. Finally got a Big 12 football schedule, including Texas Tech football schedule, so we'll get to discuss that. Big 12 meetings, a lot going on there, and a few questions that we'll get into. How you doing, Level?
I'm doing good. I choose to, there's been some ups and downs. I only choose to focus on the ups here. So we're only going to talk about the Iowa State game as it relates to men's basketball this past week and the positives of the Red Raider football schedule. We won't focus on any of the downs here. So
okay, we're all positive.
Without further ado, we'll continue now. But no, the basketball week couldn't have been more, I don't know, bizarre.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, you played a terrible first half against Iowa State and a terrible first part of the second half.
7 or 8 minutes there, yeah.
Yeah, and then it just, I've joked that it's like Iowa State was just tired of playing well, and they were like, okay, your turn now. Because it just made no sense. I mean, it was one of the biggest either comebacks, collapses, however you want to phrase it, that I had ever seen, and it reminded me of the 2006 Insight Bowl, honestly.
That's exactly where it went for me, too. Just the emotions as a fan. That's completely where my brain went.
You were dead in the water.
Yep.
Now, granted, that game was a bowl game. That game was neutral site. This one was at home, so it makes it a touch easier. But people were leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa State was just doing whatever they wanted. I mean, they're playing horse, and it at some levels a layup drill at times. You just were out of sorts, and Iowa State is really, really good. Obviously, just if you don't believe that, look to what they did versus the Jayhawks over the weekend. But and then you pull that off, and then unfortunately, I think reality sets in over the weekend, in that I think you played a really good first half against probably a better team than Iowa State, in my opinion. In Waco, we played a really good first half. Down 4, short-handed again. No Dawes, no Pop Isaacs, but Baylor's just got high-level NBA type personnel on their team, and they unfortunately are better than you really across the board. So eventually the dam just broke, and you got run out of the building. But at least you didn't get run out of your building earlier in the week.
That's true. At least you have something to salvage there. But this Baylor team, they seem like a really bad matchup for Tech in that they shoot the 3 ball really well, and you don't defend the 3 ball well at all. I'm not saying they're going to win the Big 12 because they dug a hole pretty deep early on. Are they the best team in the Big 12 right now?
Well, I think Texas is, and they just beat Baylor.
That's true.
So I want to make that clear. If you're asking me whose personnel is better from 1 to 9 and who fits the roles the best and all that, it's probably either Texas or Baylor. Because in Baylor, now they're more complete because Jonathan Chama Chachua is now back, and he changes the entire dynamic of their team.
Is it or does it feel like every single person that comes back from injury or suspension always comes back against Tech? I know that's jaded fan, but it feels like it always happens against the Red Raiders.
Yeah, well, when things aren't going well, you feel like you're being ganged up on. Yeah. I mean, Jeff Axton and I, before the game, we were talking to the Baylor radio announcer, John Morris, great guy.
Mm-hmm.
His cousin actually works with you, Chois Woodman, and her name is Connie. You know Connie well.
Oh, yeah.
That's John Morris's, they're cousins. But anyway, John was talking to Haxton and I, and they were having a reunion, a basketball reunion. And so all these tall I mean, players
Mhm.
just by. I mean, there's 50 or 60 of them start walking by. Some of them are stopping there to talk to John, and I told Haxton, I was like, I'm feeling really like outmanned here, man. I'm like, if they want to do an old man game, they got the people, they've got they've got the current team.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, felt like surrounded. Rico Gathers was one of them, and he still looks like he could do some
Mhm.
serious damage. Yeah, but anyway, but it was just, you mentioned that ganged up on, but yeah, Caleb Grill, he just missed the one game against
Right.
Big 12 SEC Challenge, but then he comes back and hits what, 8 threes
Eight
against you.
threes.
I know, and then
Fortunately, he missed one that really would have mattered.
yeah,
But
no doubt, no. But Chachua changes because he can play the 5, and they don't have to solely rely on Thamba or
Mhm.
Ojunawa, if I said his name correctly.
Well done.
Um, and they're so deep, but those guards, man, it's just like you can shut one or two of them down, but then because that's what they were able to do too, is that if anything, they struggle on defense because they're so good on offense, they can get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
Chachua makes them better on defense, and look what they did to Kevin O'Banner. I mean, he wasn't even, it's like, hey, no touches for you.
What, 3 shot attempts in the game, I think?
They wouldn't even really let him get the
Yeah.
ball, and like as soon as he did have it, I mean, he was just doubled for the
Mhm.
most part, and that's what it came down to. I mean, you're just to call it like I see it. I mean, your personnel and your offensive firepower is nowhere near what Baylor's is, and it's a bad matchup from a variety of standpoints. And one, hey, let's go small ball. Let's try to pressure them. You can't, not like Iowa State, but you can't do that, and not against Baylor. They just
Yeah.
they were scoring off of it anytime you pressured it on the
Sure.
back end. It just wasn't a fair fight.
Yeah. So really fun, crazy Monday night, and then a long stretch in between. And unfortunately, kind of an inverse game. You play well in the first half, play pretty poorly in the second half. Lots of layups, lots of open threes. It was lots of second chance points, especially in the second half against Baylor, and went about as poorly as possible there to have a 1-1 week. But
I mean, and trust me, it I cannot emphasize to you how miserable that is to try to be a part of a broadcast, or how hard it is, I should say, when you're just watching the other team just, I don't know, clown you. Just, I mean, they're dunks, they're made threes, they're having a party
helpless
at
of
your
a feeling as
expense.
you can go through, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
no
you're
doubt.
just sitting there watching, nothing you can do,
And you can't change the channel. You can't
no.
get up and leave. You just
Exactly.
gotta be professional, and it's just, yeah, it's hard, man.
Yeah.
But and it's hard on everybody when you take an L like
Yeah.
that. And then you turn right around and you're basically about to play the hottest team in the Big 12, and Oklahoma State, who
Oh
has
boy.
now won 5 of 6, I think.
Yeah, they were looked at towards the bottom of the barrel like Texas Tech was not long ago, and now they're
I
climbing.
mean, they're in the tournament now. I mean, right now,
Yep.
if yeah, they're absolutely in the field, and deservedly so. I mean, they've got some nice wins, and they're long and athletic. I think they're starting to figure some things out on offense. The Caleb Boone is really caught fire, and I think he's really started to light everybody up. And I worry about like Davion Harmon trying to drive into the lane. He did it against Baylor, and he does it all the time. But like Musa Cisse for Oklahoma State is the longest, best shot blocker in the conference, and
Right.
I just don't think that there's going to be many opportunities to do those kinds of things against Oklahoma State. But yeah, Oklahoma State's a tourney team right now. It's the Red Raiders and Oklahoma Sooners that are kind of on the outs right now, because I even think West Virginia would be in. Go look at their net ranking. I
They're in
mean,
the top 25 net
yes,
ranking.
they are. Yes, they
Crazy.
are. I know.
Yeah.
And they just beat Oklahoma by 30. They've started to figure some things out. I mean, they're again. So anyway, I don't know where this goes from here. I don't know. Oklahoma State, and then you host Kansas State and Texas in back-to-back home games. That's what we'll be talking about. Over the next show time we do this, because you will have just played Kansas State and you'll be about to play Texas. But it's just there's no. I mean, on paper, man, they all don't look like fun. I mean, none of them.
Right. And the same for the Iowa State game. You got one out, found a way to win
Very
one.
true. Very true.
When you look on paper, I don't know how you see anything you can count as a win at this point. I mean, there's definitely not. You could say it's winnable, but used to a home game, you'd say got a great shot at winning that one. Now it's kind of like, well, maybe you could if things go well, you play decent, quit turning the ball over, rebound, yeah.
And after that game versus Iowa State, Kevin O'Banner, but he basically said, he declared, we're going to the tournament,
Yeah.
and I know he meant the NCAA tournament. That's all he's ever played in, I think, and that's what he meant. But now you're 1-9 in the league. Okay, so you've played 10 of 18 games. You have 8 left, and I mean you're getting close to where you would have to like almost win out or
almost, yeah.
Or like with the 8 left, I think if you go 5-3 over that last 8, I may have a conversation with you, and I wish I would knew what the numbers and data would look like from the rest of the league, because this league is getting so much credit, and the data is it's not just the eyeball test, but if you go 5-3 over your last 8, and then maybe pick up one in Kansas City, I would have a conversation with you. Anything short of that, and I don't see it. And it's not too far fetched for you to look at it and go, you can only win 1 or 2 more. That's also So anyway,
if you're going to have those conversations, the home games are the musts. I mean, because and they may be enough to help you like get into that territory, because you've got Kansas State, you've still got Texas coming to town. Remind me, there's another.
Yeah, you have TCU and Oklahoma State.
There you go.
So technically, all four could be tournament teams, or are right now. They all could be ranked at some level. So yeah, but that's just, again, you picked a bad year to be dinged up and mediocre or young, because this league is just chewing you up right now. But it's hard for me to see Texas Tech sitting at 1-9 in last place in the conference standings after you were, I mean, nearly right there, close to the top of the sport just 7 or 8 months ago.
One basketball question from Scott, and then we'll move on to football schedule. It says, how many more wins does Adams need to have to keep his job safe for next year?
Yeah, I don't think that is determined by wins or losses at this point. I think that there's I wouldn't suggest that it's not either, but I don't know if you don't do magic numbers. I think there's I mean, a lot of times it's either you go to the tournament or not. It doesn't really matter, because there's teams out there in the country that win 21 games that don't go to the NCAA tournament, but the tournament is the goal.
Sure.
I would just say this: if things continue to get away from you, and if you start to look non-competitive, I mean, and really, if you are competitive and lose, I mean, the way sports work, especially big time business like college athletics, something or things will change. That's up to Mark and Kirby and the people that are in charge of running that basketball program, and whether that's staff, roster, marketing, who the heck knows? I mean, all the things that comes with that, but it won't be allowed to continue status quo if things just keep on the same track. I mean, that's just not the way. That's not the way it works.
Yeah, one question we've got a lot on our show the last couple of weeks is, if Tech were to qualify, which I believe just means 500 or better record, do you think they'd even be interested in an NIT appearance this year?
Yeah, that's up to staff and those players, I think, and administration too. I think, because there was a time when, when Chris got here, that they would have had a chance to be in the NIT, and I think he wanted zero part of it, just because he was tired of coaching that particular team and frustrated with them, and I just don't think they were in a good place mentally to be, because the NIT is tricky, man. Yeah. It's, especially for a program like Tech that's been eating off the NCAA tournament, apple for however many seasons it's been. And I'll be the first to admit, I feel like I've taken it for granted a bit now that you're got a long way to go to even be in that conversation. It stings a bit that you can't look at bracketology and all that stuff, but I don't know about the NIT. That's an unknown. That there's a variety of people that are involved in that conversation, and then you obviously look at guys like Kevin O'Banner, who's your senior, and go, what do you want to do here? Do you want to keep going? Because I mean, a lot of times the energy just comes out of a program and a team when they do play in the NIT. There's nobody there. You don't know when the games are.
Sure,
it's just tricky. There's a place for it, and you do have to be pretty damn good to get in it. So they don't just extend the bids to everybody at all. I mean, like it is the best of the rest for sure. And there's plenty of still teams that are squeezed out of that one that you would think, man, I would have thought but they're not. So anyway.
All right, moving on to football. We finally got a football schedule earlier the week. That was nice to get to see it on paper, get to know where you're going to be, dates, locations, all of that. What stood out to you when you first saw it? You kind of knew, you outlined last episode what the teams were going to be like, but you didn't necessarily know the wins and the wheres. So what's
we had good info. We did. We knew neither Oklahoma school, no Iowa State, no Cincy. I guess the first things I noticed were that you don't have any back-to-back really home or road games here. The only exception is that in the non-conference you have Oregon and Tarleton State. Other than
have we ever seen that before? I don't ever remember it's true road and away.
It's very symmetrical.
Yeah.
like just constant, back and forth. And so that
I mean, last year Level, I think we went a full month or right at a month without playing a game at home. Yeah. There was a stretch there that you went about a month without playing a game at home.
Well, this is one that keeps the fan base engaged. It keeps the player, you don't run the risk of just hitting the skids like, hey man, we got to go on the road for 2 or 3 weeks. This is going to be really tough. We don't have a home game for, a month or whatever. And so we got to survive this thing. There's really that doesn't exist, but you also don't have the opportunity to be at home in a 2 or 3 game homestand and like build momentum that way either. I kind of like it though. I'll be honest. I kind of like it. I think that the other, situation I was looking at the asterisks on this schedule. And what I mean by that is who's playing the early conference game, who's playing on Thursday nights, what does Thanksgiving week look like? I mean, all the extras that come with the non-normal. And I don't necessarily like it that you're playing TCU on a Thursday night, but it's gonna, should be a really big game. You've obviously played them on Thursday nights before, one in Fort Worth, one in Lubbock, and one of the one in Lubbock obviously went well. But
the only thing that guarantees is that you've got a night game, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, and that's true. It just squeezes the fans a bit and attendance a bit, and it's like the university has to deal with parking because they used to have classes going on. It's just because next year is going to be a circus anyways because they've taken away a lot of the parking because of the construction. So
sure,
I don't know what all is gonna happen there, but I like the schedule. I think it is one from a home game standpoint. Without Oklahoma and Texas on it, you have a really hard time trying to put a better trio of opponents. Because you get the two teams that played in the Big 12 championship last year, the two purple teams, they're both supposed to be really good again, right? And then Oregon, Oregon is one of the most high-profile non-conference games you've had here in years. You have to go back to like Spike when you had Miami coming in here, when you had Nebraska coming in here as a non-conference opponent. I mean, it's been a while, and so I think that's and it's there's so much irony there because it's the Tyler Shuck Bowl. I mean that's the bizarre part. Sure. I just can't imagine that everybody involved would have ever thought that this would ever actually be a thing or would ever happen. But here we are, So several months away. But glad to see the schedule. Glad it's out and good to go.
Yeah, the one that I like that I haven't really seen people talk about much is the Central Florida game at home, and I guess it's just because it's new blood. So you get to, it gets redundant at times, the same teams over and over. I kind of like that you get Central Florida. And if Texas Tech is a dark horse or a contender like some think they can be, then that game could be a pretty big one as your home finale.
Yeah, and it's your senior day. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, the Gus bus. Central Florida is well coached. I mean, they've had several double-digit win seasons. Scott Frost, Josh Heupel, now Malzahn, and but yeah, they think a lot of themselves there in Orlando.
They do.
The Central Florida, yeah, their whole fan base and on the Twitters and everything like that. But yeah, who knows how these new schools are going to handle this, because I just, again, the point of the whole of being in a Power 5 league, which this is, it's all about the grind. And you hear people term it, like in basketball wise, the psychology of the schedule and all these different things, but it's just, they're going to look up at it and on paper, and they're going to go, like we're talking about basketball. Like if you are any level of vulnerable, you can look at the Big 12 schedule in any given year, really in any sport, and go, we could lose all of these, but you could also potentially win all of these too.
Right.
And then it usually just fits somewhere in the middle. But I think they've just been used to looking at it and going, these are our 3 big games, and like in between them, we just got to keep our kids from getting complacent and keep them healthy and all those things, because if we just gear up for those 3 games, we're going to win 9, 10, 11 games. But that's just not, that doesn't exist in this league. I mean, and again, I think that there'll be interesting games from the standpoint of the old blood won't want to give an inch to the new blood, and the new blood is going to be wanting to kick in the door and like tell everybody and tell the nation, see, why did this take so long for us to get an invite to stuff like this? So there's some interesting like dynamics with some of that stuff. And I do think Central Florida and Houston are in a position to kind of make some noise. I don't know if I trust Cincinnati as much. And then BYU, I don't know what to think there, because they've been really good in recent years, but then they fall off too. So I don't know, but yeah, you're going to Provo and then hosting Central Florida, so that part is certainly fun.
So one more question on the schedule, and we'll move on to a few Big 12 topics and wrap up. Dylan asks, what is the best case scenario and worst case scenario record wise for Tech with this new schedule? So floor and ceiling type of.
Yeah, I mean, well, but based on what we're way ahead there, and I don't, you don't know your final
early
roster, you don't know everybody else's final roster, but I mean, yeah, I hesitate to say that they could go undefeated, but I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, I think that's, I don't know, that's certainly possible. And I mean, I think there's there's going to be people that feel like this is a 8-1, 7-2 type team, and if you do feel like that way, then I mean, then the running through it, which is extremely difficult to do.
Anybody that would
that is certainly possible. Yeah.
Anybody that would say that's a crazy statement. Absolutely no one would have expected TCU to do what they did last year.
No, you're right.
Nobody at all would have expected them to play in the national title game, go undefeated through Big 12 play. I mean, we kept sitting there every week saying, okay, they're going to lose one now. I mean, and they just found a way. So, yeah, I mean, that's shooting pretty high, but it definitely not impossible.
If I told you that Texas Tech was going to go 7-2 in the league this next season, would you take it?
Yeah.
and whatever came with it. Because I mean,
yeah, because I think
when you got 14 teams in there now, some schedules aren't as hard as others, and you could be sitting there. If I told you, hey, you got 7-2, you're like, okay, well, you spun the wheel, and this is the 7-2 scenario where you're tied with some team, and you don't get to play in the Big 12 championship game. There's another team that's 8-1. There's another 7-2 team. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, 7-2 is kind of that sweet spot. I think long and hard about taking it and running.
I think so.
Yeah, just because you've had this long stretch of being below 500 in the league. So I kind of like
what, 09?
Yeah, that's right. I'd like to see what 7-2 would look like. But anyways, I think that and as far as the floor, I mean, I just don't. I don't know what would have to happen because I think you're covered at quarterback. Thankfully, at least right now, knock on wood. I think that you've got enough there that I really can't envision a scenario to where you're 4-5. So I may say 5-4 is your floor.
League play. Yeah.
That's a that's a brave statement to make, but that's kind of where you're at with your personnel and with all these folks coming back compared to what others have coming back. So,
which isn't crazy. I mean, that you're saying your floor would be the same as you finished last year, because maybe throw in an Oregon loss there and call it 7-5 overall in the year, and that's not a crazy statement either. All right, so the Big 12 had meetings in Dallas this past week. Lots of stuff going on there, including reports that Texas and UT put out an offer to the league, to Fox, to get out of the league early. That offer was rejected. The other big topic, was Gonzaga and their potential as a Big 12 member in the future. So you can take whichever topic you want to go with first.
Yeah, I think Texas Tech and most league officials at these schools early last week were it was indicated to a lot of them that Oklahoma and Texas were likely in for one more year. And what I mean by that is that one more year after this one. So 2 more years, however you want to phrase that.
So through their full contract.
Yes. I think that this has been tricky. I think that is a pretty ironclad agreement on the grant of rights. And I think that, you're having to, I think ESPN was satisfied with whatever offer was made, but you have to remember ESPN is also in bed with the SEC. And Fox was the one that felt like they're not getting what was offered or compared to what it's worth as far as inventory or whatever. And I think they're the ones that aren't in bed with the SEC. They do obviously factor in with the Big 10 and the Big 12 now, but I would say that nothing is guaranteed. I think the Big 12, much like Oklahoma and Texas, are kind of ready for this thing to, kind of go do our own thing here because you're in this awkward existence right now. However, it's just got to make sense financially because you're not going to just say, you know what, this is really stressing us out here and we just are tired of dealing with it. Just go, man. Just go do your thing and we're going to be okay. No, that's not how this is going to go.
No.
But I do think that there's a deal to be made at some level, but it's just tricky. And I don't know if all parties involved are going to be okay with wanting to make a deal or what it would come with. And so you could be looking at a scenario, and that's very real, in fact, where Oklahoma and Texas are, in fact, in this league in the 2024 season as well. And it just because you think about things like your bowl tie-ins. You think about some of the scheduling things that you're going to have to continue to work through. And then how do you do, the second year of this 14-team schedule? There's just all kinds of awkward dynamics. And plus, I think to your point, I don't want to bury the lead here. You asked me about the Gonzaga, candidacy.
Yeah.
And I think that is largely on hold as this hangs over you. And so not that there's some timetable there or that you have to do this or that. And you probably could say, hey, we want you, but it doesn't go into effect until whatever. But I think those kinds of plans that you have with what you're wanting to do with your league are kind of hung up a bit just because you're kind of in this awkward existence with Oklahoma and Texas. But did you read all the fine print and some of the reporting that was out there? I mean, I saw Fox being offered. I mean, like there was stuff like, okay, we control all of Michigan and Ohio State's non-conference games. You control Texas's. I mean, they were really cutting deals here with the networks, trying to figure out a way to make it work. And again, if I'm the Big 12, I just want to make sure that I'm getting paid what this is worth.
That's the biggest thing right there.
Absolutely, because there's a dollar figure on this, or there's penalties in place if these schools depart early. And I'm not interested in some extra games or some, that needs to be shown to me in the form of dollars, because all these Big 12 schools are going to, they're going to take, a minor haircut here under this new deal, and they need to be made whole, so I'm not looking to let anybody out early or easy if it doesn't make sense for me financially. And that's just the reality of it, as awkward as it may be.
Yeah, this whole grant of rights thing is because of the last round of realignment. I'm talking when Texas A&M left you, and when Missouri and all that. These TV contracts in the leagues really got to where they have these ironclad contracts. I mean, what's the Big 12's an LLC, or I think it's an LLC, whatever, a company in Delaware now, I believe is what was reported last year because of all of this. There's so many fail safes to help these leagues out if teams were to leave them again, and that seems to be the case here. That there's no just easy out and you can't make that easy out if you're the Big 12 conference, because they owe you money, and either they stick to it even through the awkwardness. You deal with that for 2 years. You owe them absolutely no favors for leaving you.
It's business.
It is.
I mean, it's business. And I know Texas could largely pay their way out. I don't think Oklahoma's in a position. This is the way it's portrayed and reported.
Right.
I don't think Oklahoma's in a position to do that. So I don't know what's in store, because the next immediate question is, now that you've got a football schedule, and we're sitting here talking about the 24 season and who's in this league, who's not, who potentially may be in. But the next thing is, how are you going to do the basketball schedule? Because that's the next schedule that I'm curious about, because now you have a 14-team league for basketball and baseball, and what does that look like? From a basketball standpoint, how many conference games are you going to maintain? How is it going to be structured? Are you doing pods? Are you doing divisions? What are you doing? Because that schedule begins. We just get the football schedule that begins in September. I mean, basketball starts in 1st of November.
Yep.
So exactly I have a feeling that a lot of those kinds of things will be discussed.
Sure.
And the word is starting to get out too that Brett Yormark very interested in UNLV too. I know I've mentioned that to you before, but I think UNLV obviously a possibility that he's trying to pitch because of the city of Las Vegas, and I think that potentially as a basketball only member, and that's why the Gonzaga conversation it gets a little more traction, because if you don't involve the Pac-12 schools. Right. It at least gives some West Coast, and I think Brett Yormark is all about the pomp and circumstance, and nobody offers up more pomp and circumstance than the city of Las Vegas.
Yeah, we have more. We're kind of running out of time here, and we'll have more weeks to discuss this. But now that the Big Ten has a new commissioner, that may change things up with, poaching more Pac-12 schools like Oregon and Washington. They don't have a new commissioner yet, but we'll have a new one down the road. So we have no idea what that future looks like, where it looked like Oregon and Washington were, at some point going to go to the Big Ten. Now what happens there? Does the Pac-12 stay alive? Does Big 12 try to poach there? So still so many question marks in the world of realignment.
Yeah. So lots of question marks for sure.
No doubt.
Well, hey, enjoyed, what do you say, episode 24?
24. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Enjoyed it, man.
It was fun.
I did. Yeah, it was fun. Thank you for being here with me, and keep hope alive, everybody.
Absolutely. That's Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. You've been tuned into the Ask Level podcast, brought to you by Double T 97.3. Have a great week.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3.